Hey there everyone, Spazzy Dragon here, aka Syndromes, and welcome to this new type of video, Meet the Faction. This is going to be a trial video series. It might take off, it might not, I'm not making any promises, but today in front of you there's a blinged out shimmy. I think it's a shimmy. Is it a shimmy? Maybe it's a shimmy.
It used to be a Jimmy. Now it's not.
Hello, Char. You started speaking before I could introduce yourself, but whatever. Right. So, the idea behind this video is actually very simple. We are going to take faction leaders, they're going to talk about their factions, and hopefully you can understand them a little bit better. Call this a little bit like advertising, but there's many new players around there who just don't know what they are on about, and they they run into these factions, they get confused, and sometimes they go ask on the forums, so you know, these videos might actually be interesting for you to watch, so here we go. But before we start talking about this blinged out ship, let's introduce ourselves to Char at Aznable, and I think I just pronounced your last name incorrectly, did I?
Yeah, you kind of did, but that's
Haha.
not that much of a problem.
It's okay, whatever. What faction are you leading?
I am the leader of the 343, as it is commonly referred to, and I'm not gonna, spell out the Japanese name because it's long as fuck, and I will probably horribly mispronounce it.
Fair enough. So before I actually start talking about the faction itself, tell us a bit more about yourself. Like, when did you join Disco? Previous projects? Who the fuck are you? What are you doing in my channel?
Yeah, that's kind of a difficult question to answer because I have been around on Discovery for a while now. I think 2012 was the year in which I joined, actually. But active on the forums, I have been only for a short amount of time. Relatively starting in January this year.
Fair enough.
Previous projects, not that much. My freelancer experience pretty much boils down to HHC, which is the Hamburg City freelancer server. Pretty much the German PvP server, if you want to.
German.
Yeah. As you probably can tell from my accent, I'm German.
Actually, no. Not really. Considering you're, usually the guy who people see when something's about Kasari, I would say and make a guess that you are mostly, Kasari orientated when it comes to, playing Disco?
Yes, yes, although I have a big project going on in Rhineland currently.
Ooh. No more comments about that one.
No spoilers.
Asshole. Well, okay, so let's just say that I'm not really a player who, operates in, Kasari a lot, and quite frankly, Kasari is probably the house that I operate in the least in. Can you tell us what exactly is Kasari when compared to other houses? Because, everyone's probably really familiar with Liberty, because Liberty.
Yeah.
How is, Kasari compared to Liberty, and what is it that's actually going on in Kasari right now?
Kasari has been a pretty stagnant place for the past two mod versions, and part of the reason 343 is existing is actually to change that. Kasari is currently heavily going down in the direction of a civil war between three ideals, if you want to call it that. Namely the Republic of Kasari, which is kind of a Gallic puppet state.
Mm-hmm.
The Blood Dragon Shogunate, which is I mean everybody knows the Blood Dragons from Vanilla.
Yeah, for real. But,
I don't think
player.
I have to. I don't think I have to explain them in detail. And then we have the Imperial side, which is represented by 343 currently, which represent the former government of Kasari. That is
so the one in the vanilla, right?
Pretty much, yes.
So you're the remnants.
Yeah, we are the remnants of vanilla Kasari, if you want to see it that way.
So right now, what is exactly going on between these three ideologies?
It's kind of a conflict of who rules whom. The initial conflict between the Blood Dragons and the Vanilla Kasari was just who sits on the throne and which of the two thrones has the power. If it is the Shogunate throne that has the power, or if it is the Empire. And the Empire, which was Vanilla Kasari, as I mentioned earlier, waged war in Bretonnia, got beaten by Gallia, and then the emperor got dethroned and replaced by a republican government. So basically, the initial conflict about all of this is just about which kind of government do we want to have. Do we have?
So it's a struggle of power. So it's
yes,
basically Game of
yes.
Thrones in Kasari.
Yes, yeah, pretty much.
So, okay, so we have the KNF, which are currently representing the new puppet state, so to speak.
Yep.
We have the Blood Dragons, which are, you know, the original separatists, so to speak.
Yep.
And now we have the 343, which are the remnants of the vanilla house government, right?
Yep.
Okay, so how exactly are you all like hostile to each other, or you know how exactly are your reputations currently, you know, done? Like in regards to one another, in regards other houses, in regards Galley in particular, for example.
The Blood Dragons and us share the common enemy of Gallia, but that's pretty much everything that we agree upon. The Blood Dragons being outcasts in Kosari for like a crap ton of hundreds of years, kind of pushed them more into the more criminal role, which is reflected by them allying with the Golden Chrysanthemums and being neutral to the outcasts and stuff.
Fair enough. But so that does mean that you're you have a common enemy, but does that mean that you're actually hostile to each other, or is it a ceasefire?
Yes, we still have to shoot each other, kind of, because of the difference between ideals. But if a Gallic should show up, we probably will shoot him over us. Coming down to the KNF, the thing is a bit more difficult to say, because KNF, as the Navy of Kosari, is pretty much the only ally that the Gallics currently have.
Right.
So usually we shoot the KNF, but once Golden Chrysanthemums, for example, show up, we kind of try to equal the balance and help the KNF out and kill them afterwards. You know, since we are still military, if you want to see it that way.
What about the civilian side of Kasari? Like, obviously, you know, there was that certain type of control that the original Kasari government have over its civilians. Would you say that? How do the civilians view the 343 as opposed, say, the current KNF?
Well, that kind of depends on where you ask the people. In systems like Honshu, for example, you will probably have more supporters of the Republic rather than having supporters of the Empire. Simply because Honshu is a more, how do I say that, progressive region of Kosari. While in systems like Kyushu, which is kind of the bulwark of the corporation Samura and kind of the bulwark of conservatism.
Mm-hmm.
That is kind of the region where you find the Kosari Exiles supporters. Kosari Exiles being, of course, the name of the NPC faction that 343 represents.
Yeah. So, in other words, the actual economic backbone of Kosari, the actual corporations, are more inclined towards the 343 and the olden ways, right? They kind of get poked by the new government, right?
Samura is, yes. Samura being the larger of the two big Kosarian corporations.
Mm-hmm.
Although Kishiro is heavily invested in supporting the Republic, and especially because they have been the weaker corporation for hundreds of years now.
Oh, so now they have a chance.
Yeah, they currently now have a chance to take the helm. With Samura being heavily weakened by the fact that they are currently not in control of the government.
Okay, what about, you know, quasi-lawful factions such as, say, the Hagosha?
The Hagosha used to be kind of, traditionalists, but they have a bit more adapted to everything that around in Kosari, simply because of the fact that the Hagosha
well, they don't really have a choice. They always adapt. So.
Pretty much, yeah. The Hagosha are kind of a yakuza. they
Yeah.
adapted.
You know, where the
and
money goes.
there they are, exactly.
Exactly. Does that mean that your personal, you know, you're the old you're the old KNF, so does that mean that your stance towards, say, Junkers is the same?
Yes, yes. We do have we don't shoot them as long as they don't oppose us, because we don't see a reason to. But should they intrude into our space, we will probably ask them to leave if necessary by force.
Fair enough. What about, like, the nearby houses? Like, what about your old friends, like, you know, Liberty? Well, friends and neighbors, so to speak. Do they know like, do they know in detail what is happening? And if they know, like, which side do they actually support?
I would argue that Liberty doesn't really know what's going on in the towers currently, simply because they are, busy with Leeds and defending against Gallia and Magellan and the whole ending the Rhineland war stuff. Bretonia is one of our larger allies, if not our largest one.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're currently in Tal 29. This is sort of the, you know, one of the
Border
borders
system,
between,
yeah.
the Stitch, the
Yeah.
war, and such.
So yeah, Bretonia is kind of our largest ally, as in territorial wise. And after the Gallic invasion came to a halt in Leeds, we kind of started to operate together with the Bath in Leeds. Later in all of Bretonia, which we have now reversed and starting to focus more on Kusari, but we'll get onto that later.
So, you technically you do actually, yeah, here's a question. You also, well, obviously we're in the Tals now, and there's a bit of a, you know, delicate situation with factions like IMG, for example, who are under the GRN boot, but they, you know, obviously they kind of hate it. Kind of being a, a bit of an you know, but what are your interactions with them mostly? Like, can you openly assist them?
We openly assisted the IMG, I think, twice. Although only against outcasts.
Yeah, obviously.
Which isn't that much of a problem. At least if I, think about it that way. Especially considering the fact that the IMG is kind of the reason the whole war between Kusari and Bretonia broke out, and IMG being protected by the KNF after the Bath tried to expand into Tau 31. Long story. Thing is, the IMG are kind of historical allies of Kusari, or at least historical
so that's
friends.
mean that both the 343 and the KNF, like the Republican KNF, are like both of them are on the IMG's, you know, goody list.
Yeah, at least to some degree. Especially the Republican KNF will, like the IMG on obviously, because IMG being my main supporter to the GRN in the Taos, and so I would say that we kind of can operate together with them, although we try to limit it because of the GRN relations, of course.
Okay, so that's pretty much a good kind of in detail summary of your kind of messy diplomacy.
Yeah,
which, it's to
messy.
be expected, I mean. But what about, okay, so with that in mind, tell us what exactly is currently going on with the 343. Like, what is it that you actively do right now in-game, in roleplay and in-game?
Despite the fact that we are a roleplay focused faction, our main things that we currently do is raiding. We recently expanded our territory, or at least ZOI, for the 343 ID, not for the Kusari Exiles ID, with 3 Kusari systems replacing everything except Leeds in the Bretonian ZOI. Which pretty much leads to many conflicts with the Blood Dragons and the KNF. The Blood Dragons having, of course, attacked planet Tomioka in Nagano, and so that we currently have the possibility and use that possibility to interact and shoot them. Both sides, of course.
All right.
Secondly, we try to set up role-playing events. We mainly do that by doing supply runs for our larger operations, which we try to then pursue in a role-playing manner. Like, for example, if we set up an event, it's not like a mindless pew fest. It's more like everybody has a set up flight path with role-playing objectives that they try to achieve. And the third thing we do is we are relatively active on the forums.
Yeah, that's something probably a lot of people notice these days.
Probably, yeah. We are
Oh, number 4, you have a blinged out ship. Look at that thing!
Oh yeah, and that. That's
Okay.
our latest achievement.
That's your latest achievement, and obviously it is going to get someone to join your group. But, you know, considering we actually got to that topic, let's say a player wants to join the 343. What kind of faction are you? Like, for example, if you're, what kind of member is your faction suited for?
I'd say we are not that much of a newbie-friendly faction. Not because we don't like newbies. We always, let them go into Kusari, but and into our faction, of course. But the thing about Kusari is that it always has to incorporate.
Depend on some lore.
Yeah,
some understanding of lore.
You have to have at least a bit of knowledge about the lore if you want to be involved in Kusari roleplay. And given the fact that the 343 at least tries to be a roleplay oriented and a roleplay heavy faction, it kind of depends on having people that are actually relatively well versed with text roleplay.
Right.
Secondly, we don't really look on PvP skill. Of course, we do like people in our faction that are, skilled in PvP, and especially with our new raid focus and stuff, but...
Oh, I mean, it comes with a territory. You are a naval force, for example.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not our main focus, and it will never be, at least not as long as I am on the helm. So, PvP wars will probably refrain from joining us.
Actually, that is a good question here. Let's say the player joins for whatever reason, but as you already said, you are a roleplay focused faction. You already established events and that sort of thing. So obviously there are some sort of priorities and some sort of things that the members are obliged to do. Like tell us about those obligations, maybe. Well, like what you as a faction leader, what do you request from your members?
The first thing I do request is that they think out a proper backstory. Everything from I am a member from the naval forces since I got recruited from 16 to my family got disowned by Kishiro soldiers, and now I want to give that back. Or take that back.
Gallia killed my dog.
Yeah, that would probably not be acceptable.
Okay, fair enough.
So the
there goes my chances of joining. Jeez.
So the backstory is kind of important, especially since we want to do roleplay together with the faction, and if somebody wants to advance in the ranks in the faction and get access to the bigger ships, they need to give their character a bit of depth, like writing a backstory or doing a roleplay with one of our allies or achieving a new ally or something like that.
So basically you focus on contributions made by roleplay for the benefit of the faction.
Yes.
What about those ships, by the way? Like, for example, I'm a player, I want to join your faction, but maybe I'm not too comfortable in a snub because, lol. Not really good at a snub. But say I want to, I like ships that tourists here, that's why I'm currently sitting in front of you in a freaking Serb gunboat. But, like, is there a place for me in the faction if, for me to feel comfortable in? Like, is there any ship I can fly like that?
As long as you do enjoy roleplay, yes, there is. Because in that case, you could always join the supply corps and fly freighters, and once you advance a bit in the ranks, transports. But, and if you do that, you will probably at some point even reach the gunboats. But, If you want to dive into the combat, you will probably have to fly snubs for a while.
Oh.
That's
Well, to
mainly
be fair.
because of the role-playing reasons. We just have a heavy limit on our cap ships because we are kind of off every supply line.
Yeah.
We don't have a shipyard to rebuild our ships. And
Um.
once a ship larger than a freighter, larger than a very heavy fighter, including super heavies and freighters, gets shot down, I actually roll a dice if it is destroyed for good. So
Ah.
that is kind of a hardcore approach. In that case, I try to limit the use of my capital ships a bit.
Okay, so, but that's your approach. What about your enemies? Like, what kind of ships would a player in your faction face against them if they're flying, if they're encourage flying snubs? Like, is Kasari currently a place where you can just fly snubs and expect a fair fight?
Definitely, yes. At least, as long as you fly together with a bunch of people. I always try to coordinate with the two main enemies, which are KNF and Blood Dragons, and to some extent, there is another, which is the Sisterhood of Dreams.
Yeah.
And I always speak to the leaders of them or the responsible people in advance of a fight, which mainly leads to relatively fair snub fights. We sometimes do have gunboats in them, but that is usually not that much of a problem. And I don't seem to recall being ganked by Kusari factions. What I
Okay.
do recall is that we have had faced capital ships against Gallics, both on the Bretonnian and Tau front. But that's kind of, their way of doing it. And
I
in that case,
suppose
we
you.
will just log
Yeah,
a
at that
bomber
point
wing and
Yeah, exactly. At that point, you're sort of a supporting side anyway. So.
yeah, there we are more the supporting side, and in that situation, we can always lock a bomber wing and just fuck the Vela in the eye.
Okay, so far so good, I suppose. Like, what have you guys achieved so far? Like, I mean, you have your own ship line, so that's already a sign of that. Hey, you are, you're worth the developers' time to actually put, effort into. So, what are your, next steps? Like, what is in store for Kasari from your guys' side?
Um, one of our main developments in the future is to intend to actually return to Kusari. We are trying to roleplay for that and achieving that, which is also reflected by our new ZOI, which I already mentioned earlier. That's one of the first things that we try to achieve. The second thing that we try to achieve is that I am currently opting to restructure the faction to make it look like more of a feudal society rather than a navy. Although that's a thing that is mostly forum roleplay stuff rather than in-game stuff. And one of the further goals would be, the ultimate goal is, of course, to return to Kusari and retake New Tokyo and be the rulers of Kusari again.
Okay, but an honest question, like from an in roleplay standard, considering your, the remnants of, the old system, do on a, realistic level, do your guys believe that they can succeed this sort of,
Yes. Yes, they do. Because of two things, actually. Kusari society, at least the society of the exiles, is heavily rooted in the belief that the Tenno, the emperor, is not actually a human, rather than a godlike figure.
Mm-hmm.
He is literally referred to as the son of heaven.
Right.
So that on the one side, and with their Tenno at their figure as their figurehead, they cannot lose. And secondly, the KNF is currently in a really, really dire situation, fighting against the Blood Dragons in the south of Kusari and in the north of Kusari, and being crippled after the Gallic War and all of that. And we kind of aim to overpower the KNF by attacking them in a three-way war.
Right.
In which they would simply dry their resources.
Well then, well, so last but not least, like, last question. If you had to describe this faction in like one sentence, like, what would it be?
One sentence. That's difficult.
Uh, actually,
I could,
not even one sentence. Like, I want to make a 343 T-shirt. Like, what do I, what text do I place on the front?
Okay, so you need adjectives. Roleplay focused would be the first thing that comes to mind. Snub focused because
Nope.
roleplay focused.
Oh, I see how it is. I'm gonna
Pardon?
blap you with these freaking serves right now.
Don't you dare. Yeah, snub focused and
And
yeah,
close enough.
conservative, I guess. You know, describing the role play itself.
Fair enough. Okay, guys, this was the 343. This was Char and Annabelle. Look at him moving out of the way of my serves. Okay, so this was Meet the Faction. Stop shooting me, asshole. If you'd like to see more of these videos, give it a thumbs up, and hopefully, if this is, you know, reviewed as a good thing, I might make more. So, this was Spazzy Dragon, aka Syndromes. Say bye, Char.
Boy.
Where'd she go? Hey, come back! I want to shoot you!